Hello, welcome back. I've been toying with doing this video for a little while now. I've recorded an entire criterium, start to finish, on a GoPro facing forwards and a GoPro facing backwards. I'm going to talk through the whole thing. Now, as a very much a non-sprinter, I am not confident going to the finish line with anyone else but myself. I want to finish alone because I just won't back myself to win any kind of sprint, which means I have to do a lot of work in the race. Now, for a sprinter, the interesting thing will be the last few laps. For me, I feel like the interesting thing is the entirety of the race, and actually the last lap isn't that interesting at all. And spoiler alert, I didn't win it. I'm going to talk you through my processes using my experience, even though my experience is more in road racing rather than crits, but getting up to speed very quickly, racing as hard as I could with strategy under the circumstances, which was some experienced riders, some very punchy riders, and a team present. So just trying to make things go my way. If it goes down well, I will do more of it. If it doesn't, I won't. But just settle in. It's going to be quite a long vlog.
All is well, I think.
Right, here goes. So I was in a bit of a rush before the start of the race, if I'm perfectly honest with you. It all crept up on me a bit quicker than possible. I didn't know we were going to do a warm-up lap, which I thought was the start, and I still had my warm-up trousers on. As you can see, Tekkerz riders not too fussed about being front row. That was Alec Briggs you saw, and also Benjamin Tuckner. Tuckner? I think I pronounced that correctly. Off we go. It's a crit, it's a pretty frantic start. This rider's struggling to get clipped in, straight up to the first corner. Now, in a criterium such as this, with quite a technical circuit, the sort of laws of slipstreaming are a little different because they are offset by the concertina effect. Like, yes, you're getting good draft. We're just going to quick interlude and talk about my first corner here. Like, this is the first heavy braking zone of 4 corners on the circuit. I went for the quite aggressive dive bomb for 2 reasons. Number one, to show a bit of intent to everyone else that I was not just a time trialist, I could do this, but actually more so to show intent to myself, to make myself uncomfortable from the word go and make me mentally realise that actually I deserve to be here, I belong here, to try and get myself out of any kind of intimidation zone. Because whilst I know I have the fitness and strength to do this, it's races like this is more about race craft and that mentality of just being present in the race, asserting your place in the peloton to yourself, just giving yourself that kind of mentality, like I'm here in the race, I deserve to be here like anyone else does, I have a number on my back. I used to find it quite difficult as a pro to sort of realise that the riders that look at me and go, "What? Alex Dowsett's here." I never thought that. I was always looking around and going, "What? Stefan Kuhn's here," or whoever. So this was, from me, these first couple of laps were about getting to the front, but getting to the front safely but aggressively. So under braking and not in the fast sections of the race, because it's hard to move up when the pace is high. As you can see on the back straight, on the right side of your screen, we're doing 52 kilometers an hour. That's 32 miles per hour. So moving up would require doing 33, 34, 35 mile an hour, and that gets quite a bit more difficult. And this was probably the most difficult corner I didn't find this the most difficult corner on the circuit, but this was the trickiest one, and one of the most important because it's straight into the start-finish, and it's straight into an uphill. Because we're into an uphill, you want your exit speed to be good. There's another good rider on my wheel here, Frank Longstaff, and now I'm getting up to the front of the peloton. So it's taken me a mile, 2 or 3 laps to get from the back to the front, and with a heart rate of 166, I'm invested quite heavily to get there. As you can see, Benjamin Tuckner is there, and just straight off the front, perhaps showing Tekkerz presence as well. This corner here was the one I disliked the most. I just never felt like I got it dialed throughout the race. Now, at this point, I should have thought to myself, I've asserted myself. I'm here, I'm comfortable here, I belong here, I can do this race. All of my crit racing experience from way back in the day has come flooding back, and you know, I'm in this race, I can be part of it. And I'm about to make my first stupid move of the day. I'm going to get a bit carried away, let the ego take over, think, you know, we're only 3 minutes into the race. It's time to attack. And honestly, it wasn't smart because the pace was high, everyone was fresh, and it's just a bit unnecessary. So it's very silly from me. I really did let the ego take over and think that there was a possibility that I could just potentially ride away, and you know what, just underestimated the field a little bit and paid a price for it. I should have also seen that Tekkerz were very active from the get-go. I can't see behind me, you can, but there's great presence at the front from them, and they're already shutting down some moves. So Kai Davies from Richardson's Trek is also very active right from the get-go, and we're going to talk about that a bit, how active riders with no teammates actually need to be, because that is a strategy that I used throughout the race, was realising that there were teams present. So we're riding down a rider called Callum the Board, who was very active in the race. He's very strong, cyclocross rider, so well suited to these kind of punchy attacks. And this is me off. It's a big attack from me, straight over the top of Callum, and yeah, got some meaningful separation, but I've had to invest a lot. I'm still sitting at sort of 400s, 500s maybe, and then heart rate's coming up. I'm like, oh, Alex, what have you done? What have you done? Because this is when it kind of starts hurting, and there is an awful long way to go. I've got to really commit to it, because even with this kind of gap, just sitting up is, I don't know what that shows, but it just shows you're not serious. So I did commit to this attack to see what would happen, but I think it was around about this point, just half a lap into attack, I thought, Alex, this probably isn't a great idea. And honestly, I hadn't got the lap dialed in either, and this corner that we're coming up to, the one that I said is the most important, I wasn't going as fast as, I wasn't going at terminal velocity through that corner yet, and that corner straight into an uphill, really important to get right, especially if you're by yourself, because one of the hardest things to do in cycling is to accelerate. One of the even harder things to do is accelerate uphill. Now at this point I've started to shut the power down a little bit, partially because I'm quite tired already, and a bit finding the whole long way to go thing a little bit daunting, but also I would have clocked that there is a rider coming across, and with this far to go, it'd be good to have a friend with me. As you can see, this rider has come across to me and really closed the gaps in the corners more than anything else. It has shown that he has this track, this circuit dialed in far more than I do at this point. And well, I think now this is potentially good. So now we leaned into this. I'm interested to see how much power I put out on the start finish straight now to get up to speed. Yeah, we were committed to this now. This for me is a much better place, but we're also seeing that the group is closing in on us, and it's been a 4-minute effort, which is quite a big effort. I believe this is Harry McFarlane, who we see later on in the race. Some real interesting strategy comes in later on from Harry. He's kind of in no man's land here. It's a difficult one for Harry because he's invested in the effort, but ultimately he's really just provided a bridge for the bunch to move back up to us. Kind of in that kind of no man's land, so it hasn't really worked out, and ultimately it hasn't worked out for all of us, but honestly this attack was never going to work. Smart from Harry here though, probably clocked that I'm a bit tired, and just gone straight off the front, hoping I guess that I will slow down the momentum of the bunch. We're going to talk about bunch momentum. I took a wide line on that corner because I did not want to be on the front and parking it really. I really wanted the momentum to carry on. So momentum is now lulling. We are into a lull here. The first flurry of attacks. We're 8 minutes in. Everyone is now feeling the effort. That I think the initial adrenaline enthusiasm has kind of worn off, and we are we're settled in now. There'll definitely be some riders struggling already, but we certainly, everyone kind of knows where they're at now, and we're going to talk about that from a coaching point of view. Going racing is one of the best ways of saying to being able to feed back to your coach afterwards and going, this is where I struggled, whether it be overall fitness, whether it be punching us out the corners, whether it be speed, carrying speed, cornering, just the technical aspect. You can tell so acutely in a race like this where you're struggling in relation to everyone else. So I think that's, from the riders that I coach, I find it really useful when they go racing and feedback afterwards and go, look, this is where I was strong, but this is where I struggled. And I was like, okay, then it's a bit like spinning plates. You're trying to work on all the facets of being a cyclist, and you're trying to keep these plates spinning. And as you're doing so, you're working on all those little different parts of being a pro cyclist. Now, back to the race. I've invested heavily. Here's Alec Briggs. 10 minutes into the race, and this is the first time he's made an entry into the top 10. He's had his boys shepherding things around, keeping an eye on making sure nothing strong goes. I don't actually know who pulled us back, but either way, Alec Briggs has had a much easier time than yours truly at the start of this race, and that was entirely self-inflicted. That was completely my fault. I think another team worth noting here is little old town of Ipswich did experience an international race. There was a team from China that attended, so therefore we can call it an international race, and those riders become very active later on in the race. So we're 10 minutes in. The heart rate really hasn't moved much. I am paying for that early effort, really paying for it. But I think what we have seen are the riders that are going to be active in this race, the riders that are focusing on moving forwards rather than riders kind of just trying to hang on, I guess, because it's racing. You're either the hammer or the nail, or you can be something in between. So I think we experienced just quite a few fast laps here of not really much happening. And honestly, I think at this point is when I started to, my heart rate's dropped a bit. This is where I can start thinking. It's where I can start deciding how I want this race to look. And what I have realised from that first attack is it's not going to be easy. These guys are very, very good. And certainly the Tekkerz team has already shown its intentions today, and that is to keep things on a leash. You can kind of see that when they've, you've got a rider in blue here, that is an attack, whereas the Tekkerz team, when they've wanted to shut things down, it's been more of a drift off the front. The Chinese rider in red here, that's an attack. Now you just see the Tekkerz rider there, who, if it's not Benji, it is Oscar. Just that attack, it was less scintillating, I like that word, scintillating. There was less intent to it, and that the idea, we talked about how to attack in a vlog previously. The idea of that is to, you've not got that big difference in speed, so there's more of a chance that the riders behind will jump onto that, because if it's a very aggressive attack, it's obviously going to require much more effort to jump on that. The other thing is attacking from the front, you're having to accelerate with everyone seeing you start the acceleration, whereas if you're hitting people like the rider in yellow here now, if I can't see them hit me until they've already got that difference in speed, and then if you're the one being hit, you're much more reluctant to make the effort to bridge to that speed difference than if you are watching the acceleration start. I hope that makes sense. If I did do a video on that, but what became clear to me is that Tekkerz' intention was for this to all stay as together as possible and come to a bunch sprint, or have a scenario, I guess, where Alec was off the front in the breakaway. This is where I started getting a little bit rude with my dive bombing. Got confident. I did apologise to Kai, as my intention was to dive bomb onto Kai's wheel, not to dive bomb him as well, but I found myself with speed. I do sometimes apologise when I dive bomb. I also give warning. I shout dive bomb as I'm dive bombing. All very telling behind there. Alec just pushing Benjamin forwards. Some positive encouragement, no doubt, and just their presence at the front. They're sitting, the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh Tekkerz boys are sitting just ready to pounce on anything. There's some real good intention here. Now, that was a little move I pulled. Now I'm starting to work on this race strategically. What I looked for were riders with no teammates, riders without riders like me who were trying to race individually. In my mind, they became my teammates in a way that they became because they would become a problem for Tekkerz, and Tekkerz would need to invest energy in shutting them down as well as me. So when individuals would drift off the front, I would not make an effort to let them go, because I knew Tekkerz would need to do that for me. So just then I rolled out of that corner with 3 individual riders in front of me, and no, I did see the Tekkerz riders on my wheel. I had a little look back before the corner, and intentionally did not accelerate with those guys and just pulled, not blocking, just pulled immediately off the racing line, which gives a 1 bike length gap, and then Tekkerz would have to close this. I tried to do this as much as possible to chip away at the Tekkerz energy resources throughout the race. Cornering just there, that particular corner was not good. If you have the opportunity to rewind this by 5-10 seconds now, do it. The reason being is I got myself into a situation where I had to take a tighter line around that corner, and as we spoke about, that corner was super important because it leads into a long straight which was uphill that required an acceleration. By taking a tighter line, I had to navigate the corner just a little bit slower than everybody else, which meant I'd have to accelerate faster. Just once, it's not going to make much difference. You do that I think we did 40 laps. You do that 40 times, that's huge energy expenditure. And on the overall sort of energy economy of the race, that adds up. Now here's another example of what I was saying before. 2 riders attack, both without teammates. That's Kai and chap in blue. I've just not followed them because honestly, I'm of clear mind here. I'm like, it's early, and I know what Tekkerz' game plan is now, so it's going to be up to them to chase that down. Because I'm just not going to do that. It's like, and here as well, I intentionally took that corner a little bit slowly than I needed to. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your own prerogative to go around a corner however fast you like, and just to reduce the momentum to provide Tekkerz with a much more difficult job to do. And Alec has finally hit the front and had to take that up himself to an extent. So I think, you know, my intention there was fruitful. This was a smarter move from me in this race. You know, after the stupidity of the first 10 minutes, this was better for me. Alec is asking for a bit of help from me. He's not going to get it. He's just not going to get it. So he's put his hand up to call for help from his teammates. That's what that universal signal is for. Giving them a little nod just there to say, you guys need to pull this back. This is dangerous, because they are getting out of sight. And the thing about this corner is you could get out of sight. And once you're out of sight, there's a good chance you're out of mind. You can't see people on the other side of the corner. There's no references for how well you're doing. And this has created a little bit of panic in the bunch, because this is Richardson's Trek rider, so they know he's good. And he's been active for the first part of the race, so the legs are there. So they got some work to do. And that is basically how I spent much of this race, was trying to force Tekkerz' hand in chasing down, whilst myself keeping an eye on who was particularly strong and who was good. And the strong riders really were Kai Davis, Frank Longstaff, who's on my wheel right now. Kai Davis is in the Richardson Trek team. Callum Laborde in the bright yellow wheelbase team. Harry Mack, Matthew Wilson, Philip Large, Harley Matthews, Jake Jackson, Benjamin and Oscar, the two other Tekkerz riders, and a couple more. Once I got a steer on who was good and who wasn't, it was a case of trying to let small numbers of those people go, and if I wasn't in it, then relying on Tekkerz to bring it back, knowing that hopefully would serve as a decent launch pad for myself. I think at the moment Tekkerz is still having to work to bring that break back. Also the two Chinese riders were also pretty strong. We're going to talk about one of those guys later. So you see here, it is Callum has jumped across to remove. This is a dangerous one now. I remember this, thinking this isn't good, because Tekkerz were present there. Now the one thing with letting Tekkerz do all the work is if Tekkerz go and get in a move, that's a real problem for everyone else, because then a bunch of individuals have to then work together to bring back a team, and that teammate, though his teammates can be very disruptive to the bunch. You want some examples? Ian Stannard, when he famously beat 3 or 4 quick step riders in, I think it was Het Nieuwsblad, and well, Matthias Brande helping me win a stage of this year. So this is the launch pad. This was my launch pad, trying to get Tekkerz on the back foot, and then that corner became my favourite place to launch an attack, threading the needle between riders and the brick wall, because I knew that would become a difficult gap to be followed through. And that's one of the key things to trying to attack, is make sure you're not followed and try and gain a difference in speed. So that was a launch pad I used a few times. I perhaps became a little bit predictable, but it just seemed to work, because it was a scary corner. There was a manhole cover just where you didn't really want one. It was a narrow entry and a wide exit, and a narrow entry, wide exit is a typically difficult corner, because you have to tell yourself each time that there is more runoff than there is run-in, so you can carry more speed than it looks like you can. So this is very tight run-in, but one lane of run-in, 2 lanes of run-off, but you can't see that until you're there. So it is a little bit of mind over matter. That became a big launch pad for me, and it, well, it didn't really work there, but it wasn't the first time I tried it, and God loves a trier. So back to status quo, back to a little bit of a bunch slowdown really. Everyone's having a little look at each other, maybe a drink, get some nutrition in, because we're 22 minutes in, so a third of the race is done. Honestly, it's kind of at this point in the race, I wonder how on earth I'm going to get to the finish, because these races are so hard. They are so hard. Just a relentless sprint, recover. I'm wondering when the point is that I can no longer sprint. And the competition's so good. So I definitely here trying to look after myself a little bit. I just find myself attacking, going, oh, that really hurt, and then the minute I recover, attacking again. And I think perhaps that's where I could have been a little bit smarter, is trying to take stock a little bit more. And instead of attacking as often as I did, left it and tried to make the attacks a bit more convincing. Another aspect to this race that did bear an influence were lapped riders. Lapped riders were not pulled out of the race, which is absolutely fair enough, because we're all in the race. It's part of the charm with a lot of crit racing, I believe. But lapped riders do become something of a bridge. If they jump onto you, when you reach a lapped rider, you use their slipstream, and well, there's a good chance they'll use yours, and then they can provide something of a bridge back to peloton. And then also if you run up on lapped riders in a corner, that can also drop a lot of momentum. It can just cause a lot of disruption. If you rattle through the crit I did in Miami earlier in the year, I was in a breakaway of 20 that lapped a peloton of 50, and as soon as we got to the peloton, I rattled through it as fast as I could and got off the front as quick as I could, in the hope that some of the original breakaway did not. And it didn't work, so chaos is ensuing right now. Quite a few riders. Now this, with the strategies I've employed, having this many riders go forwards is a little bit unnerving, if I'm honest. It's a few too many, because ultimately I want to be there. In an ideal scenario for me, it's ones and twos that are going off the front. And the other big issue with that group was a Tekkerz rider. And knowing that I had a Tekkerz rider on my wheel was knowing that I wasn't going to get any help in pulling that brake back, so I had to invest a bit of energy there that I really didn't want to a little bit of a near miss there from Benjamin on my wheel. Very good awareness from Benji, covering his inside line, making sure you're kind of doing that to line up this corner to make sure that you've got a full racing line to take on. Real good awareness from him. Paid for that effort here. You can see I've tried to accelerate hard, but I'm losing the wheel on the uphill acceleration. This is just an area I've really struggled with, especially in the mid part of the race. I have to sort of manage, kind of knowing the aero that I know, I knew that I would still be getting a toe from further back, and knew that I could take not this corner but the previous corner very quick, and come back slowly rather than making a massive anaerobic effort to try and bring that back. So I was definitely having to manage my effort here. Let's talk a little bit about braking. There was only really one corner you needed to brake for, and it was not this one. This was a lift and a hope for the best and a Hail Mary and chuck it in. So you had a good bit of camber there on the initial part of the corner. It then switched to off camber, but if you did most of your turning, got most of your rotation done on the early part of the corner, you just used the runoff and let the bike drift over to the curb, obviously without hitting the curb. There was this corner coming up that was a really heavy braking zone, off camber, and the exit of the corner really just seemed to come to you every lap far quicker than I'd wanted to. I thought about using this little section of the ST junction on the right, but it was too rough to think about. Really tried to get my body over the curb so the wheels are as close to the apex of the corner as possible, rather than my shoulder being close and the wheels being a metre away. So the braking, I'm doing the majority of my braking with the front brake. I'd say it's an 80-20 split. I'm pushing not really shifting my weight backwards as such, but I am definitely pushing the handlebars as I'm braking heavy so that my weight doesn't come forwards per se. 80% braking on the front, 20% on the back, and then trying, and it's very difficult, trying to let the brakes off as I'm turning in. I think kind of calling it trail braking. Certainly letting the front brake off completely. If I need to modulate speed at all still, I am lightly feathering the rear brake. So that's corner. Now that little move just there, I don't know if you saw, this is an interesting part of the race. I've just swung off the front. I used the outside line very aggressively to not sacrifice any speed, but move myself back a few wheels because I don't really want to be on the front. Alec Briggs has just come up. If you wind back 30 seconds, Alec Briggs has just come up and asked who I'm working with, who my secret alliance is with, which riders I'm with, and to which I replied, no one. Because my answer really was everyone that isn't Tekkerz. And this is now, everything's just coming so quickly. This is I've used this thread in the needle line again, and this is where I've really built some confidence on this corner now. I love that corner, but what I said to Alex was no one, I'm not working with anyone. What I could have then followed up with was I'm working against you, and that's something we chatted about afterwards, and I think he understood it pretty quick what my strategy was. It wasn't to help anyone else win, it was just to try and put Tekkerz on the back foot, to give myself a launch pad later on in the race, which is what's happened here. And I didn't intend to do that, I just saw an opportunity and went, and certainly, like I said before, that right side of the run into that narrow corner was my preferred attacking spot to carry speed and not be followed by anyone else, or very few people. And I was also just very confident in that corner in being able to carry more speed than most through it. So we're off here, we're 30 minutes into the race, we're halfway through. Honestly, I'm looking to go as fast as I possibly can, to get out of sight, try and... The interesting thing between a breakaway and a peloton, it's rarely a breakaway that dictates the win, it's the peloton that allows it. And a lot of the time the peloton that can't pull it back. If everyone in the peloton clubs together and works together to bring a small breakaway like me back, they'll be able to do it. What you want is disruption behind. You want a lot of people going, I'm not working, you chase him down. I'm not working, you chase him. I'm not doing it, you do it. And then the gap goes out and you win. That's what you're hoping for. If you've got a motivated peloton behind, you're probably not winning. Behind, we've been away for 2 minutes? They're already shutting me down. This is, I think, clearly, I don't know who's chasing, but it's, it should be, I guess I'm going to see it as a compliment that it was, me off the front was seen as something that should be closed down pretty quick, and it doesn't look from the small dots on the screen like it's riders attacking to bring me back. It looks like a concerted chase. But this move I was quite proud of. And then at this point I realised I wasn't the only one off the front. I was chasing down 3 other riders. So no wonder there was some panic in the bunch. Right? No wonder at all. Which I guess then also makes Alec Briggs's question even more obvious, is I'm not getting involved in any kind of chasing. If anything, I'm working and being a little bit disruptive to any chasing from Tekkerz that happens to make their life more difficult. Alec thought I was working with someone, but it was, like I said, it was just simply working against. This is a huge investment in the overall economy of a race. I'm trying to get to these guys off the front, because with friends, maybe we can make this work with some cohesive turns, with some cohesive workload. We can get across, but it's taken me a good 3 minutes to get across. This is where my kind of lack of punchiness came into its own. It took me longer to bridge than I would have liked. And by this point, heart rate's 170. That was high for me today. I really invested a lot in getting there. And I was having glances behind, could see things behind were close. We weren't getting out of sight. So suddenly what was a good situation is turning into a pretty bad one. I'm in no man's land, where I'm so slowly drawing in the 3 or 4 riders ahead. I believe 1 or 2 of them are lapped riders. And the bunch isn't actually that far behind, so I am well and truly stuck in no man's land. I did, using the slipstream of these 2 lap riders to just a little bit of speed, a little bit of respite, and we are, I think, not long after this corner, going to make the bridge, whilst I am also being bridged too. I think this is where I realised that corner there was my strength. So just about bridged across to Callum and Harry, and this, I think, was a real strategy move by Harry that confused me. Gets off, sees me coming, gets off the front immediately, lays off. I'm forced to go straight through and do some work, which I wasn't not willing to do, but I wanted to actually just sit on the back for a lap and go, fellas, I'm just bridged here. I'm tired. Give me a minute. But immediately there was it sent me through with quite assertive slowdowns, and Harry using the outside line there to really force himself off the front. I was just kind of left on the front. I was like, this really isn't ideal now, because I'm doing all the work, having done all the work to get here. I think through this corner I give an elbow wag and to see what the willingness is of Harry and Callum. Well, Harry just goes straight for the attack. Honestly, that threw me completely. And afterwards I spoke, and talking about disruption, Harry's used the lapped riders to cause this, and this is brilliant from him, because his intention, because he's going to get in front of all these lapped riders before the heavy braking corner, allowing him to take a load of speed. I really made some poor decisions here on where to put myself with these riders, and I had to compromise speed on that corner quite significantly. I could use these riders' slipstream to re-accelerate, but I'd lost a fair bit of momentum to them, and then still it's taken a good lap to get Harry back. We finally made the gap, and I think we should be able to see the lapped riders then provide a stream back to the bunch. Now, I've got a little bit of separation here, which I probably wasn't aware of, if I'm honest. Just what was a good situation has now turned into a bad one. I'm in a very incohesive group, that's why I'm using the outside line to force myself off the front. Having a little look around, can see the bunch looming, and I don't want to let these 2 riders go and head back to the bunch, but my heart's not in this anymore, because I don't believe these 2 guys. I think Callum in yellow, his heart was in it, but Harry had other ideas. Now, what Harry said to me after the race was, all is fair in love and war. He said he knew the bunch would be more motivated to chase a breakaway with me in than a breakaway without me in, which was a lovely compliment, but one that I did not realise at the time. So what Harry was trying to do in attacking was get away from me, because if he could get away from me and the bunch caught me and Callum, say, they might not realise Harry was still out front. And afterwards I kind of thought, actually, that makes sense. That's pretty smart. Hindsight, would it have played out differently if we'd clubbed together and worked super hard? I don't know. Now, we've been joined by Benjamin, looking cool as a cucumber. Not wanting to do any work, obviously. I've got teammates in the bunch. Why would I work? Absolutely fair enough, mate. But I'm going to just ease off a lot and force you to go around and join Harry and Callum. I kind of just wanted to see what you'd do. Racing in a group of 4 against one Tekkerz rider, I would rather than racing in a peloton against 4 Tekkerz riders. One Tekkerz rider we could work against, I think. Now Benji, he's just dropped back to me. He's provided that bitch. The Tekkerz strategy in this race could not be faulted in the slightest. They were superb. That little, if you wind this back by 20 seconds, that little just ease off in pace by Benji, similarly to the sort of softer attacks, softer chase downs earlier, it's just provided that bridge from peloton to breakaway. Really, really smart there from him. His head's in the team. He's got into a strong breakaway there. Freshest of the 4 of us, probably the strongest as well at the time, but his head is in the team situation and what's best, and I guess he kind of knew that 1 versus 4 without Alec there was better than was worse odds than being in the bunch with all of their teammates. So hats off to them. So we're back to status quo, back to the bunch. I'm getting pretty tired now. We're 20 minutes into racing. I'm tired. This is hurting, but it is a smaller bunch than it was before, that's for sure. It's a little more stretched out. You can see I'm mid-pack, and I'm trying to use every energy-saving tip in the book here. I'm using a wider line than a lot of others in that corner, really trying to get my tyres on in between the double yellow lines and the curbstone to just give myself the straightest possible line possible through that corner. Here you can see that's a nice move from Kai. Everyone's tired. This is hurting everyone now. It's a big slowdown, and Kai has taken that opportunity to hit the front with a real big difference in speed. Alec Briggs, who I believe has not done a huge amount of work up until this point, really sort of holding out for the sprint. Nothing wrong with that at all. Just jumped straight onto that. So we can kind of see now that Alec is super strong. Nothing's phasing him at all in this race, and as we get into the real business end of the race, this is going to be an issue for him. Now, I think coming up soon is my best attack of the day. Yeah, we're going now with the old thread and the needle job off the back of Kai's move. Kai's on the front. I did clock that. Knew he'd have been gassed from that attack. On the front, he's gone slow round that corner compared to me. This wasn't a massive power attack. It was spotting the opportunity and using it, and also the timing. I know I've just made a huge effort previously, but I think I got the feeling in the bunch, like with that slowdown, that everyone has, and everyone there is a little bit cooked, maybe with the exception of Alec Briggs. And this has now worked, and this is kind of, that was just me checking the GoPro was still working, obviously. but this is also everything I kind of wanted to set up for the day as a non-sprinter. I needed the race to be as hard as possible, and Tekkerz working as hard as possible to get to the point, at some point in the race, likely towards the end, that everyone was tired enough that I could get away, or someone could get away, preferably me. I'd have rathered it was me. So, yeah, I've not just slipped away though. It's the bunch is on it straight away. The gap has already come down a bit from the first from that last lap. Chinese rider on the front. Now there was two Chinese riders that finished in the front of the group. One rider Wang Kucheng and another rider Li Boan. I apologise, I do not know which of those this rider is, but he was very, very strong. And I was thankful to have some help, but I also realised that if I went to the line with this guy, I was not winning the race, because his acceleration out of every corner right now was causing me some real difficulty. There's a spike of 800 and something watts on the wheel to re-accelerate. That was causing me some issues. In about 10 minutes time, I'm starting to think I actually at some point need to not be with this rider as we come into the final laps. I need to be back by myself, and that's going to be very difficult because he can corner well. I'd say here would have been my best bet, because I felt was my strength compared with him. But his acceleration could probably handle anything that I could throw at him. He was a quick sprinter, and a week later he won round Hillingdon, so showed he's fast. He's really fast. So we got away. We were away for a long time now. Probably the next 15 minutes we worked seamlessly together. He invested heavily into this move. I invested everything I had into this move. And I didn't do a whole lot of checking behind me. Could hear little snippets from the commentators as we rolled through the start-finish lap each time, so I knew we were still looking good. Every so often I'd look back if I was second wheel and see the bunch in the distance, probably 15, 20 seconds behind perhaps at the most. Not much, but this is crit racing, so not much in a crit race can be enough. We worked really well together, generally doing lap turns, which I think just meant there was as little time spent riding side by side as possible. And for me now, I was using this corner to change, so that I wouldn't have to slow down and speed up. I'd just take a slightly longer line to keep the speed, so I'd slot onto the wheel with minimal acceleration required. I cut short the chat earlier about slipstreaming versus the concertina. The difficult thing about positioning crits is the positioning. If you are further back, there's going to be a far greater concertina effect out of corners. So if you run a race in a whole crit in 5th position versus a whole crit in 50th position, the average power might be similar, but the normalised power could be very different. You might have a much more consistent power in 5th place, 4th place, but you're going to be taking a bit more wind. Back in 50th, lovely shelter on the straights, but it's going to be very sprinty out of corners. And Alec Briggs, after the race, spoke about how he was having to accelerate really hard out of corners when he was sat back in 40th position. Knowing that, I never let myself get into that position. Alec also commented on, we talked about this rider from the Chinese team, saying how sprinty he was, and such is Alec's experience. That's Alec with an S, Alec with a C and an S, Alec Briggs' experience, that's a better way of saying it. Such is his experience, he intentionally got off this rider's wheel, let another 3 people in, so the someone else would be accelerating on this rider's wheel and not Alec, as he recognised that it was hurting him a bit too much every time. You know, that overall energy economy of the race. So positioning in a crit is not as simple as positioning in a bunch. Further forward you are taking more wind, but you are having a more consistent power output. Further back, more slipstream, but harder accelerations on a tight crit such as this. We've got quite a big gap here. I was hopeful for this, I really was. Just spoiler alert, it didn't work. But Bunch is fairly well out of sight there with 10 minutes left of racing. And like this, and we are working really well together. So I was hoping. I was really hoping. I think whilst we're lapping and there's actually less Bunch stuff to talk about here, let's talk about training. Training for this kind of thing. Training is, as I touched on before, recognising where you were strong and where you weren't. What I will put in the link, a link in the description below, is a link to a session that I created for some riders who struggled with the intensity of which crits and cyclocross races start, and that really did focus on that initial out of the blocks. The session is called Out of the Blocks work. That initial jump from nothing onto high power, because I think sometimes training, there's a lot of science around training, working on VO2 max systems, working on zone 2, but sometimes you just have to recognise where you're struggling, particularly in races, and kind of try best to replicate that in training. And that's what we did. So it's a session that involves going out the blocks really hard, and then setting it into a really short over-under session, resting for 5 minutes, but a rest that is 0 watts, and then repeating that again. So yeah, if you're interested, put a link. No obligation. You don't have to sign up to anything. I think it's a WKO file. Put that in the description below. You can download it at your free will, upload it to your Zwift or your Training Peaks or wherever you train from. Give it a go if this is the kind of thing you struggle with, and see what you think. And that's all within my Thighs Club coaching company. For this kind of thing, VO2 max sessions would be pretty king. I think crit racing, short time trials, it's kind of the best kind of thing you can train for on a time budget. If you've got a pretty intensive workload, I think you can be very competitive at this kind of thing off of 8 hours a week, maybe one long ride on the weekend, and some 30 to 90 minute sessions within the week, indoors, outdoors. Just have to be really efficient with your time. And also, like racing, I would, as a coach, I would highly recommend racing as a form of training for racing. Making those mistakes, learning different strategies, employing different strategies, tyre pressures, cornering, racecraft, all of those things add to race results. It's difficult you can train the house down, but I need racing to just fine-tune the engine at the end. So put some links in the description below for everything you need, plus that training session. We're 51 minutes in. I need to have a good look at the lap board, because soon we're going to start seeing laps. The bunch seemed to get close just now, and then it seems to have disappeared again. It's difficult sometimes to differentiate between some lap riders, and there's the bunch. We have got no more than 10 seconds on the bunch, but it's been around that for a while, and that's enough. That is enough, but you do have to factor in the rush for the line at the end. There's a lot of people sat waiting for the sprint, ready to kind of clock the fastest lap of the race by probably 5 seconds. We're going to see that rush for the line, and my inability to go with it. Such was my investment in everything that happened before the final lap of the race, and I missed the lap ball again that time. I still believed. I believed in this. I think at this point I was starting to try and think about how to disrupt the Chinese rider, how to basically get away from him and get by myself. And where I would have done it, we got caught before I had the chance to do so. Where I would have done it would have been 2, 3, probably not 2 laps to go, because then that's business end of the race, and I think he'd have been ready for anything. But maybe 3 or 4 laps to go, right at the end of his turn. We were swapping turns in the same place. So right at the end of his turn, when he was at his most tired, maybe even using that corner there. It would have been tough to use that though, because that could have. I wouldn't want to have done it in a dangerous way, which would be the case on that corner. There's a fine line between racing aggressively and racing dangerously, and I think pulling a stunt on that corner would have been on the dangerous side of the fence. So I think probably at the top of there's little markers like that. Just then, you have to analyse your breakaway companion. That I don't know if you saw it just then. If you did, wind it back 10 seconds. When he sat down, that just split second to stop in pedalling. I think there's some fatigue setting in there. There's a little more body rocking than there was before. You have to analyse your breakaway companions. And I was like, okay, I think he's getting tired. So I was also aware of the bunch that is now not 10 seconds behind us. They're about 5. We'll talk about that in a second. Even though it wasn't my best area, I would have attacked the Chinese rider around, not now, but basically the minute he sits down, kind of now, because I think that is when he would have been his most vulnerable physically. Let's talk about Benjamin. Let's talk quickly about Benjamin Tuchner. I apologise, I don't know how to pronounce your surname, Benjamin. After the race, I was humbled and became aware that basically Benji, who his team fondly call him, got on the front and reeled us in more or less single-handedly. No help from anyone else. It was a pure Team Sky of old, just get the team on the front, ride it back, set it up for a sprint for Alec. He did that by himself. Benji was at the Growlock and was strong there as well. He's a young lad, and I think has a pretty good future ahead of him. So hats off to him. If you can see there, my confidence on that corner, go back, I've managed to try and get a reference point of where the Garmin is. I really was starting to put the wheels the tyres as close to the wall as I possibly could, just to get the widest line possible through that corner. You didn't really need to do it on any other corner, but that one was one I was pretty proud of how I managed to get around it. Right, so we've been caught. There's not long to go now at all. This confused me that I was allowed to slot straight onto Alec Briggs' wheel. Prime position for the sprint. It doesn't get better than this. I think we're 1 or 2 laps to go, and I have been allowed the Mark Cavendish wheel, the Jasper Philipsen wheel, and I'm the most tired rider in the bunch now, having been out front all day. That I really didn't understand, because I am going to inevitably serve as a roadblock between Alec and everyone else, because I'm done. This was something I really did not understand from the riders I was with. Right, lap board, where are we? Still can't see it. I think that was 2 to go. I assume it was 2 to go because I attacked with 1 to go. This bit just threw me. I was like, why am I here? Why is no one fighting me for Alec Briggs' wheel? Because I'm not known as a sprinter at all. I'm a time trialist, and I've just been off the front, so I am tired. It's just that really didn't make any sense to me. But I wasn't complaining. I was like, yeah, I'll sit here. This is fine. Heck, I might even still scrape a result from this. And we had a little bit of a look round. Perfect little opportunity for someone to attack, but good on Tekkerz. They spotted the threat. Now I wanted to disrupt there. I wanted to move up and just be on the inside and cause a little disruption. Fighting for Alec Briggs is now with the wheel, now with the Chinese rider, which did compromise my line through here, but ultimately I believe the Chinese rider did back out in the end. I gave him plenty of space, but backed out. This is 1 to go. This is a Hail Mary, do or die. Alec jumps on it immediately, and had a quick look. No, I still committed, but I think this was more for me now to accept I'm not winning, but if this is strung out enough towards the finish, maybe I can make this difficult. Maybe. And by stringing it out, riders have got to travel further to get around me at the finish, so maybe I can scrape a top something result, but ultimately I'm not winning this. Now we're going to watch the rush for the line, and this is where I get out of the way. You see everyone's winding up for prime position into the final 2 corners. Alec has shown superb awareness, that's why he's so good at what he does. Seen that rush coming and reacted to it. He led through the final corner and he gapped them to the finish and won by 5 bike lengths by himself. It really was sort of a pleasure to watch and be part of. And I just tried to get out of the way. I didn't want to impede anyone's sprint because my race was done. I roll it in for 11th place. I secured some British cycling points, 5 of them. That was unexpected, but I was proud of my race. I was really proud of my race. I was happy with a few silly moves, especially at the start, but I think I gave Tekkerz a harder time than I think they were hoping for, and I'll take that. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. These crits, these town centre crits, they're not as commonplace as they used to be, but good day out for people watching. It's a good day out for races. Oh look, there's some Thighs Club kit. You can buy that. That's merchandise. I helped design it myself. And but yeah, good race. Enjoyed that. My Garmin then told me to rest for 3 days. It was a hard race. I will put a little screenshot of the numbers from the day up around about now, and there's a vlog from the day as a whole, which you can watch. This is where, right now is where Alec and I were talking about my race strategy, and which he knew exactly what I was doing. And this is where I also have a chat with Harry, where he tells me that what his race strategy was as well, and that was where I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's a compliment. So, anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this slightly different YouTube video to the norm. I'll get to more crits, and if I can film them I will, and do the same if this is well received, and if it's not, well then this will be the final video of this style. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
Yeah, I was just trying to ride. That's why I asked you if you had a teammate, because I was just trying to ride individuals.
I didn't know if you were taking a piss or not.
No.
That's what I was like, did you?
I was just trying to ride individuals against the couple of teams.
You know, when Tekkerz has got like 4 here, and we're going to drag Alex Briggs on there. So.
Yeah, you have to play in the game. You have to
Well, he's just taking his jersey here, so it's a really good race, and spoiled by really going too fast, he said.